And we have the big screen here. So we are illuminated on the wall, and we're good to go.
Because we can't hear you, Pat. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
We're on the big screen here in the conference center. So we're ready to roll, and anyone who comes in can see in quite large projection every speaker. So it's good. And thank you, Melanie, for setting this up.
No problem.
Got it. Boshko, you're the man.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. So, taking the floor and talk to you about our ELPIS experience. And since this is a ceremony that greatly repeats every year, I'm going to talk about the recent things on the ELPIS life. And afterwards, all the other ELPIS colleagues will talk about their experience. The theme I choose had to do with two challenges, two threats we got in the last years. First, the COVID-19, then the war. And these two threats were, for us, a way of organizing new teaching methods, new ideas about doing the war. It told us lots of things. If we begin by the COVID-19, the first thing I should talk is that we got a tremendous shock when in 2019 we discovered there was a virus, there was pandemic, and we had to stay at home. And so as we were at home, we decided to use our computers and do the much we could with them. I did it first in my private life and also for the lectures in the Faculty of Law and in the Catholic University. I used my computer, I called my students, I gave the lectures at the exam time. They were previewed, they began and finished at the exact time. And I do, as I normally do with my students, I try to learn them something, to learn something from them, and talk with them face to face. So to me, the lectures does not mean a blackboard with names. It means faces, it means people, it means a real relationship with the students. And when the students were not there, I would call for them and say, well, are you here? Oh, João, where are you? Oh, Manuel, come back. We want you. When I say that, I don't record these pictures. So there's no problem of these lectures. There's no problem of privacy, like our French colleagues discussed with me once. And there's no problem because we are in a learning relationship. There is an administrative relationship. I show myself, the student can show himself. I don't want to know nothing about his life. It can be portrayed with Palais du Louvre, with Versailles behind him, and no matter what he wants to show us. So there's no problem of privacy. There is a relation of learning. In that relation, I show myself, and the student has to show himself. And that seems to work because I was able to create a good atmosphere with my students. And in the end, I believe that we came to a good result. And some things that I usually do in my lectures became a little bit better than before. For instance, the moot courts or the simulations, as I do in my lectures. I use the formal scheme with a small difference. For me, there is a team of judges that is also composed by students. So be a judge is a task. But since we have always more candidates to do the simulation, the moot court, than the one that can play, I normally say, well, we can have some journalists that can report what happens in court, that can make interviews to the persons involved, and why not to put it in the internet? I used to do in a normal way with my students before the COVID-19 because they wrote some articles and they put it in the blog of the course. But in the last 3 years, where the moot courts have been made by Zoom, I discovered that my students have a real journalist passion because they made TV broadcastings, they made interviews, special programs discussing the problems that were debated from the judge point of view, from a sociological, a psychological, calling specialists to to tell his opinion about the case and so on. So that part that normally was a marginal part of my moot court that I used for give some work to the students in order they could be occupied while the others were dealing with the law questions. That part became not marginal, but became indeed the best part of the program. And some of my students showed me how to do a production with the television, how to create directs, interviews, how to mix everything. And it was indeed a very good experience. Well, but I might say it's not the same as being in a classroom. We should not replace the normal means by these ones, but we should we should combine both the new video measures, new video ways we discover, and the old ones, and perhaps try to do something different. In the ELPIS, we tried also different things. First of all, we created the VWAR review, the ELPIS VWAR review, which is, for those who don't know, the first law review made by videos, by articles that are produced in videos. Every review has a team, and we collect different positions from all the topics of law about a theme that we are discussing. We produced until now 4 numbers. The 5th number that has to do with climate change will arrive next September. I think it's a good experiment that we've done. Those of you that do not know it, you can find it in the internet in our webpage. But then we organize some conferences. We have a first conference on the next generation EU, where we discussed all the problems having to do with the end of the COVID crisis and the attempt of recovery in Europe. And we put it also in the internet. Then our friends from Hanover came with the idea of doing the transcontinental lectures. And that was indeed a great experience that we repeated in 3 or 4 semesters. And we want to do it in next years. And the idea is having a lecture with the topic chosen by nobody, by the one who is invited. He doesn't care who he is. He's a specialist, he's a law professor, is supposed to know what he's going to talk about. And we put that together one specific day of the week, and we broadcast it for the students. And that was also a very good experience that we want to keep it. But since the students were at home and we want to keep having connections with the others, we also began another experiment with Lincoln University, with my dear friend Melanie and my dear friend Akram. They are here and they participated in the experiment. And the idea was that we try to create a kind of competition among the students, and at the same time putting the students studying together. The teams that could be the same or could be different. The idea was that each Portuguese student had an American colleague that he will be working with for some weeks and some months, preparing the presentation they had to do afterwards. And we began to have small groups, but I believe the first one had almost 20 students. And in the end, I had to eliminate lots of them because otherwise it would be impossible to do a good work like we've done in the beginning. And that experience I discovered now by Melanie, that the students liked it very much. We liked it. We liked doing it, but it happens that the students also liked it because they contact another colleague, they contact another law system, they learn together, they work together to do a presentation. And you can see also in the webpage of the ELPIS that we publish the best papers during that period. The papers produced mainly by Lincoln University and the law faculty of the University of Lisbon, but we have also the participation of the German students that made presentations but did not write the papers. And now we have also our Hungarian colleagues that participated in the last emission, and they wrote some papers. And it was also a very good experiment. And it shows that when surprising things arrive, we have to do what we have to do, and we have to try to react in the best way against those things that could be bad, but can turn out in a very good thing. When I say that these surprises are not real surprises. If you look at the COVID-19, we knew for a long time that that problem should exist in the near future, but we didn't want to hear about it. We had before the mad cow, the bird flu, the pig's fever. Everybody talked about this kind of pandemics. They should arrive from one day to another. There is even a Hollywood film, Panic, Infection, from 1990, where Stephen Soderbergh tells us the story of COVID-19. It's exactly what is going to happen afterwards, with some romance in the middle. Of course, it's an Hollywood film, but nevertheless, we were supposed to know what was going to happen, but we didn't care. We didn't pay attention to the scientists. The politicians were not interested. The university was not interested. And the same thing happened with the second bad event that was also a threat to us. It was the war in Europe. In the beginning, we were surprised. The right way to put it was we were incredible. We don't want to believe, we could not believe that a war was happening in Europe. And that incredulity is, from one part, a good thing. It's the victory of Kant. Kant that defended, as you know, perpetual peace. And we were so happy with our victories in Europe, political, economic, and so on, that we believed in the perpetual peace. And there was in a review, a Philosophie magazine, an interesting article with a dialogue between Kant, Hegel, and Nietzsche. And Nietzsche points his finger to Kant and says, it was your fault. You make them believe in something that could never exist. And Kant replies, and of course it's a fake dialogue, but very lively, very intense. Kant replies, well, you forgot that in my book, I put two conditions to the perpetual peace. We need to have democratic countries and we need to have good people. And that is something that is very difficult to find nowadays. And these two ideas, this incredulity came indeed for a sensation that could never be happened, a sensation of an optimism that unfortunately degraded nowadays. What we have done in Europe, well, we try to open our universities to students coming from Ukraine. As a matter of fact, they did not come as much as we expected. In Lisbon, we opened places for 20 students and came 5 more than the 5 that we usually have. But the structure was prepared and now they can come next year. And we also try to engage some of these colleagues in research activities and even as assistants. Well, in our countries, it's almost impossible to hire them as professors because there's a competition and the rules by the law are very hard. But we have now, in my group, we have now a very good student coming from Ukraine. And I know that our friends from Hanover have also done the same. And there are some assistants coming from Ukraine. Bern as one of them, as far as he told me the last time we've been. In the last meeting in Fribourg, there was a representative from the Ukraine University that now works in Hanover, and we try to integrate them. And this also has to do in using the digital means, because we discovered that some of the students told us that if they could not come here immediately, they could receive and see video emissions. And they asked us to do some special broadcasts for them. And it's a little bit strange to think that someone somewhere in Ukraine, in the middle of the bombs and the shots of weapons, there is someone hearing to a lecture in law, international public law, or something like that. But on the other way, that's a victory against the bad guys, and that's a way of keep doing what is right and what is the law. And this was the introduction I wanted to do, and now I give the floor to my dear friends. I don't know, since we have 3 German people, we could begin by Bernd Oppermann, that is the elder, and former coordinator, to tell something about his experience on ELPIS and on Hanover, that is the founding university of our program. Bernd, it's yours before.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Very good. Thank you so much, Vaško. And thank you so much for our hosts, Patrick and Melanie, that we are allowed to participate at your gorgeous conference down there in Florida. And sorry that we are not there in presence, but in the moment, which is a part of our subject today, of course, it is it's pretty difficult to do these transcontinental flights, despite that my colleague, who is the competent part nowadays, Friedrich, that he did it obviously and made the way over the Atlantic Oceans. Well, concerning our subject, post-pandemic and wartime and ELPIS role, of course, if I start with the first one, the post-pandemic thing, it has been said, of course, most of all, we lost the immediate contact to our students due to the pandemic and or not the pandemic, the countermeasures against the pandemic was, of course, the problematic thing. But in the meanwhile, we also had some positive aspects about these countermeasures, I must say. First thing I like to mention that I was, from our last year experience, I thought, well, I can go to any of the lectures today or the seminars of the SEALS conference again and attend there. But and I found yesterday, as I want to talk about Adam Smith and the law of things, that there was no internet connection, you see, so I could not do it and had a TV evening. So, but nevertheless, so in the same way, we react in other respects, like first I found that, I mean, to have some positive about it, that our administrative conferences, and I mean many administrative conferences, of course, where I have to attend, are much better without the personal contact, that they are quicker, cleaner, you see, and really advantages in some respect. Afterwards, to my surprise, I discovered that some of our students preferred the online contact in compared with the old-fashioned physical lectures, because, well, I guess they appreciate the online versions because they could enjoy that format, for example, at nighttime. So at the time when they want to hear it. Also, they could enjoy it independent of the location where they are. For example, they take a bath and hear at the same time my lecture. So there was a specific admiration of that kind of things. Still, of course, nevertheless, I would quote it negatively in a pedagogical sense. But obviously, the customers found some advantages concerning this new format. So in other words, there should be some elements we should keep for the future when we come back, which is of course necessary to lectures in physical presence, or even the more modern forms Professor Vaško has talked about, like moot courts or legal clinic or whatever, which could be done in both forms, of course. Well, let me continue. Concerning my Erasmus and ELPIS experiences, we found also some advantages. For example, to the Spanish address, 2 weeks ago, we had at Hanover audience, we had a presentation of Fernando Galindo Ayuda from Zaragoza about IT and legal theory. You see, and he did it even not from Zaragoza, but from his holiday domicile in the area of Huelva, Spain, where he appeared at Hanover. I mean, such things wouldn't have been possible that well and technically perfect before the pandemic, for the pandemic time. So there are, I want to highlight some of these positive things as well, despite the fact that I'm convinced, I believe that is necessary, highly necessary to have the students in present, what we started in Hanover already for the last semester, at least the most colleagues did. So, well, what we should, of course, raise concerning the ELPIS network is that we do not get tired of these international contacts. That means having students of our partners at Hanover, bringing our professors to other destinations, and having other teachers from law faculties at Hanover. It is very important, and maybe more important than ever, to keep this European space of higher legal education, and even more, if we broaden it a little bit to the United States and other places, international space of higher education. So for that purpose, it is necessary to be physically at another place. And despite the difficulties I have mentioned at the beginning, it is possible, of course, to travel. I have been several times in Lisbon, even in physical presence, to teach there during the pandemic. I have been in Poland for academic events. I have been in the United States. Thank you again to my hosts in Kentucky, in Tennessee, Knoxville, and in New Orleans, of course. Thank you to Patrick. So it was still possible during the pandemic time, although not so easy. And we should, of course, continue this way. It is, as mentioned already, necessary. I don't want to talk too long. One more word maybe to the wartime matter. It hurts me personally, of course, because as Washko has mentioned already, I had two long-year assistants from the Ukraine. One a little bit, some years ago, it was a lady who supported my project in Russia we did 2 decades ago. And she was translator for Ukrainian and Russian language, and also a specialist for more modern forms of legal education. And more recently, and she was from the East Ukraine, from the area where they speak Russian, you see. And more recently, another assistant of mine, a senior assistant, he did his habilitation in the meanwhile. His PhD, he was on the way to habilitation. Now he's working in practical things. And he is from the West Ukraine, so speaking Ukrainian, and had, of course, very good experience with them. Also, we had, you might not remember, it was long before I started with my ELPIS activities. We had already two relationships to the former Lemberg and the university there, Lvov, as the Russians say, or Lviv, as the Ukrainians say. So many relationships, in other words. So that's, of course, a reason why I'm concerned personally about it. And to regard the other side, the Russians, we had 3 years of an intensive project of enhancing several projects in Russia and Siberia, model projects enhancing legal education. Some of the colleagues from ELPIS with their institution, they helped there, and also we had some Russian colleagues. So we could never believe that in this range, what we discovered newly, you see, I was raised in the Cold War area, so we were very glad that the East opened, and it gave us a new world, you see, in a specific way. And we could never believe that they start a war with each other. See, but it happened like that, and of course, this specific war raises, of course, a suspicion of being motivated by traditional European redefinition of borderlines, once a common sport of aristocrats, which became, of course, brutal and industrial by the use of modern national states, which built up their integrity, try to build up their integrity on it. We thought we got over it, but it is obviously not the case. It means it is just, I think it's just the opposite of what we did so far. When I look back to my professional life, to my academic life, that we try to open international spaces to be in a specific way anti-national. And now it seems to be the reverse idea, which is coming back again. And I don't see that only from the Western side. Also, I'm sad about that we invested 3 years of work in Russia to raise some things there to an international level, at least in some model universities. We were allowed to shape about 2 decades ago. And at the same time, at the Ukraine, which became, of course, a little bit more Western as it was before. But nevertheless, it's a pity, again, that we have this war. And I'm convinced that our international activities, nevertheless, like the exchange of students, of teachers, of ideas and best practice, that our European and international spirit is still a good cure against any nationalism and imperialism. I should mention that, I would say. One may say, of course, compared to hard metal of cannons and rockets, our actions are not more than a drop of water in an ocean, but an ocean consists of nothing but many drops of water. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my dear Vern. And the end was great. A poem, a written poem by you. And now we are coming to Granada and here to Paco, our friend Paco, Francisco Calderon, that is, as you know, a professor of constitutional law. So what we were saying in the beginning was a joke with himself, which is very good. We need to laugh at ourselves. I want to do it with him also. Paco, you have the floor. Paco, we are not hearing you. We are not hearing you. You must. No, we are not hearing you. Paco. It's down.
I'm sorry, it was close, my microphone. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And now you can hear me well.
Yes. Perfect.
Well, I was saying that thank you, Vasco, and thank you, Patrick and Melanie, for having me in that interesting conference. It is perhaps, well, the second, because we had also in Freiburg some reflection on the war. And this is the second occasion that, at least in my case, I will speak about the consequences of the war for our universities in Europe. I will be focused in Europe, of course, but some of the reflections are not also for Europe, but are also for the whole war. I mean, we have economic changes at the moment. We have with COVID-19 and economic crisis. We have now another economic crisis with the war, but we had also cultural changes, and the cultural changes are important also for law studies in Europe and the world. as a consequence of COVID-19, we have more and more legitimation of studies in science because people knew that through the science we can solve the problem. I mean, the whole world had a very good problem, a very bad problem with the COVID-19, and politicians and jurists were not, unfortunately, a way of solving the problems. Sometimes we provoke more and more problems, I mean, more uncertainty in the juridical field, because we had some resolutions, different resolutions and sentences of different courts, and then we have no the possibility of translate to transfer the idea to the society, our societies, that law studies are important for society. I mean, unfortunately, other fields have more success in having a legitimation because of the contribution that they have to solve our problems during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then this is for the post-pandemic times, but we have now another problem with the war, because we lack also legitimation in the way that law studies and law in general are oriented to solve conflicts, to give peace to the society. And since we have a war in Europe, that is a demonstration that we were incapable of provoking a juridical solution to a conflict. That is also a problem from the point of view of legitimation or law studies. So from the cultural point of view, I will say that through pandemic times and through the war in Ukraine, we have a weak position in the field of university, high school or university studies in Europe, at least, because that cultural problems that contribute to weaken our discourse, our narrative, and in general, juridical approach to the problems. But we have also some kind of economic problems. We had with the COVID-19, were a lot of universities with problem, most of them in the United States, because are private university, and they receive less revenues during the COVID-19 times. We have a better situation in Europe, because most of our universities depend on the public revenues, and then we didn't need so much the tuition fees from the students, the enrollment of the students, and then because of that we have less problems, and we can cope the necessities of digitalization of our universities without big problems in general. I mean, of course, there are some particular problems in some countries, but in general, I will say that we didn't have a big problem. So what's for the future? The future is also worse, because during the economic economic crisis that we have now, and because of the new orientation of the public expenses, we need to spend more money in military weapons and so, because of the war, and that means that we will have less money for healthcare or less money for universities, that we will need to use in a better way our resources in our universities, because we will have less money. So that is also important crisis. And the problem is we left another crisis during the COVID-19 times, and we have not finished with COVID-19 times. We are already, we are now even in the COVID-19 times, but we have now another problem with the Ukraine war, and that problem means that we have less money for our universities. It is important to say, when we speak from the problems of from the war in the Ukraine war, that the most important thing now is the people from Ukraine. This is it's not so important that we have less money for our universities or something like that. It's not that I am saying we had to make another choices. No, I have to underline that the most important thing is the people from Ukraine, to help Ukraine. And then if we have less resources, we have to cope with less resources and doing the same things with less resources. But I only want to say that this is the situation, that we left economic crisis, and we began another economic crisis. And in this economic crisis, we have to divert a lot of resources, a big deal of resources to military war. Like in the other crisis, we had to divert also a lot of resources to healthcare and health crisis. And we have a very difficult situation for the future in our universities. Of course, we have also a lot of possibilities. In digitalization is one of the possibilities. Vasco Pereira underlined all the lights of the digitalization, and Amber also about other very important question that means that it is much better in some way having online lessons in our universities. I have to say, I have courses online since 2007. So it's 15 years that I am teaching online. So I am used to teaching online. I am in favor of teaching online, and if I will do some critical opinions, or this is not against digitalization, but also to underline that there is not the same situation in all our universities in Europe. I mean, University of Granada depend a lot of the students, but not only university. The whole city depends on the students. We receive every year more than 3 million tourists only to see the Alhambra. That is, we have a very strong touristical revenues from our city, and we receive another million for going to Sierra Nevada. This is a ski station close to Granada, half an hour to Granada, from Granada, and we receive a lot of students too, and students remain the whole year. And university have a lot of service for our students, restaurants, hotels, and many other services. And our city have also a lot of services for our students, because we had a lot of students coming from the whole world and from Spain. Granada is the first university receiving Erasmus from Europe. From all the universities in Europe, the first position is Granada. That means that it's not only useful for our university, but it is also useful for our community, for our society, for our city. And university has also a function at least as we understand, a function of integration in the community, solidarity with other parts of our society. And then it is important for us face-to-face lessons, face-to-face courses, because if we were university only with digital courses, that were of course really a very big problem for our university, but also for our community, for our city, and for the cities that are around Granada. So face-to-face lesson is useful for the community, but it's also useful for the students. It's not the same experience when you are talking through a computer when you are in the city. That's explained the Erasmus program. If we have only digital universities, we won't have an Erasmus program. Erasmus programs has the meaning of interchange cultural approach, of living in other countries, having experiences in other languages, and that is really important. This is not only digital. Digital is very important. I agree with Vasco and with Bernd that we have to go on with digitalization of our universities to offer more and more courses, global courses. For instance, I have my master is a master that have a lot of nationalities, our students, because it's online, and a lot of students from Latin America could be in our master in different hours, in different times, with all the advantage of digital courses. And then we have to offer more and more courses for specific fields, global courses, courses for teaching in a particular segment of part of our societies, specialized courses for professionals. But in my opinion, university had to be presential university, face-to-face courses had to remain as was always the university. I mean, with the changing cultural approach, changing different language for teaching from different studies, different students that could participate in our courses, but also could see our city, could understand our culture, could have a different approach of the life in another country. So in my opinion, we have to remain as a presential university in the future, but at the same time, we have to offer more and more digital courses in the field of global studies for other countries and also for our countries. Well, what will be the future for us? It is impossible to think in the future. Vasco said in the intervention, it was incredible, the war in Ukraine. We were not prepared for that. We were not thinking the possibility of having a war in Europe and having a very big problem that the problem we have now, not only a problem of involution in the sense of civilizatory involution, but also a problem in the field of economy, in the field of cultural patterns, and we have a war that is changing everything. Not for good, it's changing everything for bad. We have problems in the fight against climate change because the problems with the gas in Russia, with provisions of the gas from Russia. We have problems inside Europe with a different role of some countries that were not particularly good in the relation with rule of law or democracy, but now they have a more important role because of the war, and this is not fair. We had to go on with our principles. We cannot change all our principles because of the war. We cannot change ourselves because of the war, because in that case, Russia will won the war. I mean, if Russia changes our cultural patterns, if Russia get a weak democracy in our countries, if Russia gets a more flexible approach in relation with the problems of the rule of law, if Russia gets a more flexible approach in relation with the fight against climate change, we see Russia will win the war, and this is not good. So we had to change something. We had to sing. Otherwise, we need to sing in the real problems that we have, and separate and make not make a combination of our structural problems in the war. We need to isolate the war and treat the war as a war, and make all that we can make for the Ukrainian people, help Ukrainian people to win the war. That is, of course, necessary, but without change our soul as Western democracies, because that will be horrible for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paco. And this end is very important, because we cannot just think what we are doing right now, and sometimes it's not good enough, but nevertheless, it's what we can do. But we have to think about the future, and there are things that cannot be changed. So now I give the floor to our man in Florida, Friedrich Germelman, Professor Germelman from Hanover, that represent us face to face, present in Florida, and we are very proud of his presence and very pleased to see him. And Pat now. Okay, so you have the floor, Friedrich.
Thank you very much, Vasco. It's so. Right.
Here, I'll mute Pat. I think that'll work.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was sorry. I'm still having. I think now it's better. Yeah. Test. I think now it's better. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Some technical issues. And thank you so much, Vasco, for having me here. And well, I have to tell you, it's a great pity that you aren't here, since, well, Pat is spoiling me, obviously, and the place is great. It's wonderful. And I would like to do just two short remarks, which are, first of all, connecting to what Paco just did, and a highlight said concerning a personal change. Since I'm here personally, and I once again learned how important it is to personally talk about things, to see each other, to exchange, to get the finer nuances of things when talking about legal problems. So I absolutely support the idea that it is necessary to lectures, to give the students of meeting their peers and of exchanging with them. However, it is obviously true that the online world is giving us such a lot of great opportunities. that we should absolutely use in by way of adding them to what we've already had in the real world, in the world of personal attendance. Let's put it that way. So I'm very much in favor of not only strengthening our personal exchange programs, but also to add the best of what we have developed during the COVID times. And well, we did develop several wonderful things during COVID times. We have already talked about the online exchange with our friends in the US, with Melanie, with Akram, and obviously the wonderful idea that Vasco had with the and then these small conferences that we did in the ELPIS network, like on a specific topic, just gather a couple of people for an online exchange in the morning for a couple of hours, and then possibly deal with it a little bit later in more detail at the conference. That might be something that could be developed. Because the second point I would like to make is that in times like that, Parker was rightly talking about the soul of Western democracies. It is imperative, in my opinion, that we do much more on the comparative law side, that we are exchanging about the problems that we are facing in our democracies, because those problems, I was at a panel with Akram the other day, and I learned very much. I learned a lot about how problems are perceived in the US as far as democracy is concerned. I learned a lot what kind of, well, strategies one could develop, not only legal strategies in the narrow sense, but also strategies in terms of outreach to society and so on, which was extremely helpful in my opinion. And I think we should further our attempts to do that within the ELPIS network. So that might be another, let's say, another path to develop, furthering our international exchange in terms of comparative law, comparing problems, comparing solutions, comparing within all the legal traditions and legal orders that we have in our program, in our network, and to learn from more than we did it before that. I think international comparative law is becoming more and more important. And since we were talking about the war in Ukraine, and since we've been talking quite a lot about Russia, I think there is another player in the room that has not addressed that precisely yet, and that is obviously the idea of having, well, that is obviously China and its idea of having a completely different legal order or world order or cultural order, or what you would like to call it. In that perspective, comparative law seems to me even more important, since we are talking about the Western Hemisphere mainly here, and we are talking about the challenges that we are meeting, challenges to democracy, to the rule of law, to migration, to climate change. All of these topics have already been named in our discussion. And I think that since the international legal sphere is a little bit struggling at the moment, so it's highly improbable that we are going to have advances in terms of international treaties in this field, or we see how difficult it is to keep the states abiding by their obligations that they have taken over under the Paris Agreement, for example. best practices within the Western world will help very much. And since we are a program that is well based in the Western world, it is not exclusive in that way, since we obviously are integrating great partners from Brazil, from so on. But I think having an exchange on these topics, having an exchange on best practices, how to deal with questions, how to deal with climate change, what are we doing, and is it successful? It's not particularly successful in Germany. We've been doing quite a lot in the past when prerequisites that we have been taken for granted, that is gas supply, everything comes on the table again. So that's one point, and we are learning about what the United States are doing at the moment in terms of climate protection. So I think that's just an example. The rule of law will be another example. So I'm very much in favor of furthering this international comparative approach within our program with small conferences like we did that, I don't recall the exact date, but Vasko will recall when we just met for a morning to exchange on a specific question online, then have international conferences within the framework of our annual meetings of the ELPIS network, and well, try to do teaching together as we have been doing that with our US colleagues. That will help a lot, I think, in furthering the mutual understanding and possibly in developing good ideas and developing best practices in the legal sphere. That's basically all I wanted to say, since Patrick has told me that and I absolutely agree, have to be brief, since brevity is the soul of wit, as I recall. So I think I just will stop here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Friedrich. It was really interesting what you said, and very pointing. The idea of comparative law is essential nowadays. We cannot do other thing than compare what we are doing, and that's some sense, that gives some sense for our activity, international activity, and so on. And now back to Europe and to Nuno Cunha Rodrigues, my dear friend from the Law Faculty of Lisbon, that is also an historic in this kind of organizations, and it's always a pleasure listening to you. No, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Vasko. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank first Pat and Melanie for the kind invitation. It's always a pleasure to speak with Pat.
Nuno, you should be in Florida with us.
I know. I hope next year I will be with you.
Excellent. I hope so too.
But nevertheless, this is also the discussion about the in-person attendance and online. Of course, online is great, but it's not the same as being in person. So like Professor Vasko told, Professor Vasko is always the international reference for ELPIS, but I'm happy to be a colleague at the law school, and I have to tell you that Professor Vasko is also an outstanding professor, of course, and the reference here at the law school. So it's a privilege to work with Professor Vasko. So I'm not kind of the ELPIS guy. I'm more of an ELFA guy, but still I'm here to speak a little bit, and I listen to all of you carefully up until now, and it's easy for me to speak at the end after all that has been said. About the situation of teaching and all that we can contribute nowadays. First of all, I listened very carefully what my friend Friedrich has spoken about, the importance of comparative law. We all were aware of the several article, papers, and books that came out during the COVID-19 situation. Everything was related to the COVID-19 situation. But I do think we have now a new field of approach with the war in Ukraine that could be enhanced through legal studies and also could contribute to a new world. We have different approaches that could be thought and research within the Ukraine situation. And I'm speaking nowadays, for example, energy law is quite important, what has been happening within the European Union, international public law, of course, international sanctions, constitutional law, EU law. So we have a huge field where we could maybe cooperate and enhance legal studies in this area, and also transatlantic legal studies, also in cooperation with our colleagues from the United States. And I do think we have not done so much as we could do, and maybe contribute from the legal science perspective to achieving a solution for the war that is happening. Well, but the war has not finished yet, and we have to keep on moving with our legal studies. As far as my experience has taught me, and here I do agree with Francisco Balaguer Calagón in terms of the Erasmus courses, it's not the same at the end, the in-person attendance and the online attendance. Similar to Granada, Lisbon has been attracting several students from all over the years, from Scandinavian countries, from Germany, from France. They all appreciate our sunny weather, our food, our way of living, and of course, our teaching at the law school. And Professor Vasco has contributed for this, for the Erasmus experience. And so at the end, the online attendance that we had for 1 year during the COVID-19 situation was not the same. And I have to speak about the human relations that we build. The majority of you that are here online, I've met you in person. So it's a privilege to have had lunch with you and spoken with you in the past. So we are able to keep these human relations online because we met previously. But to build new relations online, it's much more difficult. And to build and to keep those kinds of relations. So I do think in the future we'll have to balance between the online attendance, of course, and in-person attendance. Of course, I've been participating in several international conferences. It's much easier nowadays to attend those conferences online. We just switch on and switch off the computer. We learn, we listen, and we don't have to travel. So the benefit is huge. But then we have that lack of human touch and human relation that help us to build these networks, these international networks. So the solution for that, I don't know what it is. I do think it will be some kind of balance between those two. And here, the ELPIS network will have to contribute, of course. So I do think we are now starting again to meet in person, but we have to keep on the online possibilities that were opened following the COVID-19 situation. Also about the Ukraine situation, we've had in Lisbon several students from Ukraine, and actually they benefit from the joint degree that we have with Vilnius, with Nicolas Romeres, with Rouen. Some of our former students are now in Lithuania, and they are helping to build a network of international Ukraine students that try to help the situation in Ukraine. So through that, we also can try to help give our small contribution to this situation in Ukraine. So we've been having some talks with Ukraine students, some conference by students from Ukraine that are outside Ukraine, and trying to, somehow help the situation and help also the future of Ukraine. So we have also to speak about the after-war situation, and where, again, legal issues will be quite important to help this new country that will be rebuilt after the war. And the possible accession to the EU is already ongoing. I have to remind that if Ukraine joins the EU, it will be the fourth biggest country of the European Union, following Germany, France, and Poland, I suppose, even bigger than Italy. So we have there maybe some work to do, and this network of ELPIS is, of course, of the major importance for that. So I don't want to take a lot of your time. Of course, Professor Vasco, again, he's in charge of the ELPIS. I'm just here because Pat and Melanie kindly invite me. It's always a pleasure to meet with Pat. Also, I have to tell you about the experience that I've had with Pat of joint classes that we've had. We've done that 2 or 3 times already. Classes between the University of Lisbon and Loyola in New Orleans. They were great. My students love those classes. They are really thrilled whenever they can speak with their students from the US. So I have to maybe enhance or keep those possibilities ongoing, because it's always great to join these two perspectives, both from the US and from Europe. So again, Pat, I do think we should
Yes.
cooperate in the future in this area. So
We
again,
will.
thank you so much for your time, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you.
The pleasure is ours, Nono. It's always great to have you here. And you are already a historic international relations in our faculty, so we needed you here. We needed you to be here. Well, I don't know if Dimitrios wants to say anything about the program. He's also very active from Hanover's part, and we still have some time. I think we have to end at 10. I would like also to have some space for Pat and for Melanie. I don't know if they want to participate in our and Ekrem, of course, to participate in our discussion. But we always have time to listen to Dimitrios if he has anything to say. I believe he has.
Well, dear professor, thank you very much for this opportunity. I have to admit, I'm not a scheduled speaker here for today. I'm merely an interested spectator, let's say. But of course, since Sunday is a perfect day for meeting family members, it is great to meet the ELPIS family and our extended friends here today. So I'm also very much into brevity. And what could I possibly add for the Hanover part of the program after having Professor Oppermann and Professor Gerbelmann already presenting their insights? So I'll rather keep it short and well, in terms of maybe the transatlantic legal lectures, which were mentioned also and are a quite well, I'd rather say it has advanced to be an important part of the acquis of the the whole ELPIS product. So I'm going to tell more elements about that in Tuesday's lecture and Tuesday's panel, in which I am actually scheduled speaker. Well, the only thing which I could say at this point, like some sort of spoiler, we've tried to combine as much as possible our dear American friends and of course as many ELPIS scholars as possible. I'm also trying in the last days in the spare time, which I do not have actually in this spare time, which I do not have. I've tried to let's say I'm struggling in winning another continent in this context, at least as some sort of guest, and we'll see if that is going to be feasible and possible in order to maybe at a certain point of the future transfer the transatlantic legal lectures into a trans-Pacific one also, and also then turning into global lectures. We'll see how that's going to work. I guess I can say more on that on Tuesday. For the moment, as I said, brevity is a charm for me also. So I'd like to thank you warmly for this opportunity. And also congrats to our hosts here, Professor Hack and Professor Reed. It is a lovely panel that you've managed to combine here. So thank you warmly.
Thank you, Dimitrios. It's always great to hear from you. Indeed, it was a good advertiser for the session of Thursday. So we'll be waiting for the news that are going to be told there. Well, so now thanking again our American friends to provide this this opportunity to meet. I'll give them the floor. I don't know if Melanie, Ekrem, or even Pat want to say something and participate in our discussion. Please, you have the floor.
I want to just thank you all for for organizing this. And I'd like to pay tribute to all of you as well, because I think it's been quite moving to me to be introduced to such generous, warm-hearted, kind, brilliant scholars like yourself who bring a level of empathy and kindness. And Professor Pereira da Silva Vasco, I find you just an exemplary person. And I mean, I'm very forever indebted to my friend Melanie Reed and my colleague, my dear friend she is, for having introduced me to all of you. I think the United States really needs to be introduced to all of you. And to get to sort of more pedagogy, I think we in the United States could learn a lot from the highly successful countries that you all come from. And we've been in panels and discussion groups, and we talk about the war in Ukraine. But I think we all are struggling with the tension between, I think, democracy and the rule of law. I think in the United States especially, we could learn so much from your highly successful countries through the things you've been doing as to how we can protect the rule of law going forward. Because I think that may be something that is a little equivocal right now in the United States with all we're going through. And there are things I'd love to learn from all of you and like to participate with all of you to help elaborate, such as, how do you get citizens to accept the rule of law? I think that's something that is relatively equivocal right now in the United States. And I think we could all learn a lot from you. Talking about Ukraine, I'm in complete agreement with everything everybody said, but I think the cautionary tale for all of us is, it shouldn't have come as that much of a surprise to us that when the Soviet Union fell and we expanded the borders westwards of the European Union and NATO, and kind of looked the other way as living standards did not improve it for most Russians. In fact, we saw living standards collapse under Boris Yeltsin, and that there would not be a country governed by the rule of law that would be prone to militarism on Europe's eastern border. And I think we in the United States deserve a lot. We should be self-reflective as to why we were not more generous and more involved and more active to ensure and facilitate the rule of law in Central and Eastern Europe, and I think Western Europeans as well. And I'd just love to learn from all of you going forward this coming year. And I just pay tribute to all of you. I'm so appreciative for all of you and so thankful for all of you. I'll stop.
Thank you very much. It's always great to hear you, and you are already a part of our community, of our ELPIS SEALs community, and we count on you for further experiments. Pat or Melanie, I don't know if you want to also to have the floor.
Melanie, you should go first. Okay, I will happily. Vasco, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to, of course, thank everyone for their contribution to the SEALs conference. The ELPIS cooperation adds a richness and a texture of international relations to our Florida experience here. So it's very important that we continue this. And I know we'll do more of this with SEALs and with all of our individual universities with ELPIS. So thank you to everybody. It's great to see you. I wish you were here. As I mentioned, next year, this conference will be at the famous resort in Boca Raton called the Breakers. So please keep it on your radar if you possibly can. I hope that more and more of us can get together, continuing like in Fribourg, and every time we meet, whether it's in Brazil or Hanover or wherever, we must keep doing what we're doing and accelerate what we're doing. As Nunu mentioned, our students thrive on this authentic experience with the colleagues from Europe, from Brazil, from all over. I think some of you may know from some of our correspondence that my students in New Orleans have contributed a fair amount of money and a lot of emotion into supporting Ukraine. And we've done some collaborative programs with colleagues in Poland and our students. And it's been very much, I've taught classes live from Poland, showing my students that many of the refugees. As Bernd said, this is a terrible tragedy, what's happened in Ukraine. For us, all of us who are internationalists, they've exploded the paradigm of modernity for us in international law. We're back to the old days of redefining borders, and it's terrible. But tomorrow, if you're interested, and if you're not already on a panel, Melanie can get you the Zoom links, but we have a rich program on the Ukraine situation. We have two prominent speakers who are joining us for another panel on constitutional judicial legitimacy. And one from Poland, one from Germany, and then we have other scholars from all over speaking about these vital issues, from the Polish Constitutional Court to the Hungarian and German courts, and of course to the United States controversial term that's just ended. Our own Supreme Court has taken some very strong measures or decisions. So we'll be talking about Ukraine and about courts tomorrow. So please, if you would like to join us, you're more than welcome. I think some of you are already listed as speakers. And then of course on Tuesday, Melanie has the biggest show with many speakers on international collaboration, and that will be wonderful. So Vasco, thank you for the ELPIS contribution, and we just need to do more of this and keep on sharing the love. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. You are also one of the souls of our cooperation, and it's great that you are here. And we were amazed when SEALs applied to the ELPIS. We thought it's a good way of starting to do things together. And we already have a very strong and long cooperation with you. As you know, you used to go to Lisbon every year to teach, and we like very much having you here. Like all of us, all of you that are also invited in coming to Lisbon. And it's great to keep on this work together. And it's good doing it by Zoom. It's better doing it face to face. So let's hope that next time we can be face to face. Bye.
Can I say one thing? Professor Gemmelman, Professor Gemmelman is here, and he has been a hit. And I just want to thank you because he's added so much to the people here, for the people in terms of perspectives.
Great. It's great to know. Our man in Florida. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Too kind.
You've added so much.